At 7 that morning, my boyfriend kissed me goodbye. At 9, 400 employees stood up and applauded him as our new chief executive officer. I was still holding my coffee when Alexander Callahan walked onto the stage, and for one ridiculous second, I wondered whether I had somehow entered the wrong building. I had not. Alex wore the same charcoal suit he had buttoned in my kitchen less than 2 hours earlier. The same man who had complained that I bought terrible coffee was now standing beneath the company logo while our division president introduced him as the new chief executive officer following a confidential acquisition. Everyone around me applauded. I forgot how. Then Alex looked across the auditorium and found me. His expression changed for barely a heartbeat, but I knew every version of his face after 11 months together. Surprise. Confusion. Then immediate control. He had not known either. That almost made it worse. Alex had spent months working on an acquisition he could not discuss. I had spent months complaining about my job without ever mentioning the parent company because, until that morning, neither detail had mattered. Now they mattered more than anything. Alex began speaking about stability, creativity, and earning employee trust. I heard almost none of it. 6 months earlier, my manager had encouraged me to apply for senior brand strategist. I had built my portfolio, survived 2 internal reviews, and spent countless late nights proving I was ready. Alex becoming my chief executive officer changed nothing about the work I had already done, yet I could already imagine how it might look if anyone learned he was also my boyfriend. When the presentation ended, I thought I could escape upstairs and figure out how to breathe normally again. Instead, our division president asked the brand team to remain for introductions. Alex came down from the stage and moved through the rows, shaking hands. Every step brought him closer. When my manager finally said, "This is Noah Bennett," I stood and offered my hand because pretending we were strangers suddenly seemed safer than explaining the truth in front of everyone. Alex looked at me for one silent second before taking it. "Mr. Bennett," he said. His voice was perfectly professional. "Mr. Callahan," I answered, although I had called him Alex over breakfast. His hand released mine immediately. No smile. No private signal. Nothing anyone could question. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt as though something precious had disappeared behind that handshake. Back at my desk, I found a message from Alex asking if we could talk after work. Before I could answer, a company email appeared above it. My stomach tightened as I opened the notification. The final interview for senior brand strategist had been scheduled for Friday morning. I read the last line twice before the meaning settled in. Executive leadership attendance required. For 6 months, that interview had represented everything I wanted. Now the man sitting at the top of the company was also the man who kept a toothbrush in my bathroom, knew how I took my coffee, and had kissed me goodbye that morning. And on Friday, he would be sitting across the table deciding whether I deserved the future I had worked for long before he became my boss. By noon, I had read the interview email so many times that the words stopped looking real. 6 months of work had led to Friday, yet 48 hours before the most important interview of my career, the person occupying the chief executive officer's seat had become the man who knew exactly how nervous I got before presentations. I considered withdrawing. The thought lasted less than a minute. Walking away would mean sacrificing something I had earned because of circumstances neither Alex nor I had created. Staying, however, came with another problem. If I received the promotion, people could eventually decide the answer had been predetermined. Melissa Parker dropped into the chair beside my desk and asked why I looked like someone had canceled Christmas. I told her I was thinking about Friday. She reminded me that I had been preparing for the position since spring and that Laura had nominated me before anyone knew the company was being acquired. Those facts should have comforted me. Instead, I kept thinking about how quickly facts could lose against appearances. At 3 that afternoon, Laura asked me to bring updated campaign projections to the executive floor. I stepped from the elevator carrying a folder in one hand and coffee in the other. Alex was approaching with 2 senior directors. We both saw each other at the same moment. His expression remained neutral. Mine probably did too. "Mr. Bennett," he said. "Mr. Callahan." That should have been the entire exchange. Then his eyes dropped toward my cup. "Back to regular milk?" he asked automatically. Silence followed. It lasted perhaps 2 seconds, but it felt much longer. My stomach tightened. Alex knew immediately what he had done. For months, he had watched me switch between oat milk and regular milk depending on what the neighborhood coffee shop had available. That was boyfriend knowledge, not chief executive officer knowledge. One of the directors glanced at my cup. Laura looked between us. I forced a small smile. "I mentioned it during the employee introductions yesterday," I said. Alex did not hesitate. "Right. Of course." He continued toward the conference room, but I could see regret in the set of his shoulders. I returned downstairs hoping everyone had forgotten the moment. Melissa proved otherwise before I reached my chair. "Okay," she said quietly, following me into an empty meeting room. "I have a question." I placed my folder on the table. "That sounds dangerous. How does Alexander Callahan know what kind of milk you drink?" I repeated the explanation about the introductions. Melissa studied me. She was not accusing me of anything, which somehow made the question harder. "Noah, I watched that introduction. You two shook hands for maybe 5 seconds. I had no safe answer. My phone vibrated inside my pocket. Alex had sent a message. "I am sorry. That was careless." Before I could respond, Melissa's expression changed as she looked through the glass wall behind me. 2 co-workers near the printers were talking quietly, and one of them glanced directly toward us. Melissa lowered her voice. People noticed. My promotion interview was still 2 days away, and suddenly the question was no longer whether I could earn the job. It was whether anyone would believe I had earned it once they discovered who already knew exactly how I took my coffee. Friday arrived with the kind of quiet that made every small sound feel important. I reached the conference room 10 minutes early with my presentation deck memorized, my campaign projections checked twice, and one promise to myself: whatever happened inside that room had to belong to my work. Laura Bennett sat beside 2 senior executives I recognized from previous reviews. Alex occupied the far end of the table. He looked at me exactly once when I entered. "Good morning, Mr. Bennett." There was no warmth in his voice. "Good morning." I understood what he was doing. After the coffee mistake, he had decided distance was the safest protection he could offer. Understanding it did not make it easier. For the next 40 minutes, I presented the brand strategy one had spent months developing. Laura questioned my timeline. One executive challenged my projected customer growth. Then Alex asked why I had allocated nearly 18% of the campaign budget to regional testing when previous launches had used less. His tone was sharper than I expected. For 1 second, I forgot he was my boyfriend and felt only the pressure of being challenged by the chief executive officer. Then I answered. I explained that our previous national launches had wasted money correcting problems that smaller test markets could have identified earlier. I showed him the numbers. Alex studied the page, gave a single nod, and moved to the next question. No encouragement. No rescue. No sign that he had listened to me rehearse difficult presentations in my apartment before. When the meeting ended, Laura thanked me and said the committee would contact me after completing the evaluation. Alex merely said, "Strong preparation, Mr. Bennett." I walked out knowing I had performed well, yet the formality followed me down the hallway like a weight. Melissa found me near the elevators and asked how it went. "I think it went well." She smiled. "Then why do you look miserable?" I could not explain that being treated fairly by Alex had somehow made losing our ordinary familiarity feel real. By lunch, the office had found something else to discuss. 2 people stopped talking when I entered the break room. Another coworker casually asked whether I had met Alex before the acquisition. I said no more than necessary and returned to my desk. At 4:17, an anonymous message appeared in my work inbox from an address I did not recognize. There was no greeting. No signature. Only one sentence. Everyone knows why Callahan likes your work. I stared at it until the screen blurred. They did not know about the 6 months of preparation. They did not know Alex had challenged me harder than anyone else in that room. They did not even know we were together. Somehow, suspicion had arrived before the truth. My phone vibrated with a message from Alex asking whether I wanted him to come over after work. I looked again at the anonymous sentence and finally understood what frightened me. It was not losing the promotion. It was winning it and watching people decide that everything I had built before Alex arrived had never really belonged to me. Alex came to my apartment that evening carrying dinner from the Thai place 3 blocks away, but neither of us touched the food for almost 20 minutes. I handed him my phone and let him read the anonymous message. His expression hardened, not with anger at me, but with the controlled frustration I had seen whenever he faced a problem he could not immediately solve. I can have human resources investigate this, he said. That is exactly the problem. He looked up. Explain it to me. I sat across from him at the kitchen counter, suddenly exhausted from protecting thoughts I had been afraid to say aloud. I have worked there for 5 years, Alex. I stayed late when campaigns failed. I took projects nobody wanted. I earned Laura's recommendation before your company ever entered the picture. But if you step in now, even to protect me, people will see your position before they see my work. Alex remained silent. That silence gave me enough courage to continue. I am not ashamed of loving you. I am not ashamed of being an Omega. I am afraid that once people connect us, they will rewrite everything that came before you. His gray eyes softened. Noah, I would never take credit for what you earned. You would not have to. Other people will do it for you. He lowered his gaze toward the phone. Then tell me what you need. I had spent the entire subway ride home trying to answer that question. Now the words came more clearly than I expected. Do not use your power to save me from your power. Alex went completely still. I reached across the counter, not to ask for reassurance, but because I needed him to understand the difference. If you order an investigation, influence the promotion committee, or publicly defend me as chief executive officer, then every rumor gets another reason to survive. I need whatever happens next to be something nobody can honestly say you controlled. Alex considered that for a long moment. Then I removed myself. I frowned. From what? Your promotion. Your compensation. Your performance reviews. Anything involving your reporting structure or advancement. My chest tightened. Can you actually do that? Yes. I disclose our relationship to human resources and the board. They document that we were together before the acquisition. Then an independent executive handles every employment decision involving you. I had expected Alex to offer protection. Instead, he was offering to surrender authority. People could still talk, I said. They probably will. His answer surprised me because he did not promise to fix something he could not control. But they will not be able to truthfully say I decided your future. The apartment became quiet. For the first time since Monday morning, the pressure inside me loosened. Alex reached toward my hand, then stopped before touching it, waiting. I closed the remaining distance myself. I hate that this is happening, I admitted. So do I. His fingers settled gently around mine. But I would rather step away from every decision about your career than let loving me cost you ownership of it. The next morning, at 8:12, an email from Human Resources appeared in my inbox requesting a confidential meeting. Alex had already done exactly what he promised. The Human Resources meeting lasted 37 minutes, and Alex was not in the room for a single one of them. Dana Mitchell, the company's head of human resources, explained that Alex had formally disclosed our relationship to her and the board that morning. The record included the date our relationship began, the acquisition timeline, and a written recusal covering my compensation, performance evaluations, reporting structure, promotion, and any future employment decision in which his authority could create a conflict. I listened carefully, waiting for the part where everything became more complicated. Instead, Dana slid a document across the table and said, "Your promotion process will continue under an independent review panel. Mr. Callahan will not receive your scores, participate in deliberations, or approve the final decision." Hearing Alex called Mr. Callahan still felt strange, but something else mattered more. He had actually stepped away. Not symbolically. Completely. By Monday morning, 3 independent executives had replaced him on the final review. I presented my campaign strategy again, answered questions about leadership, budget planning, and long-term brand growth, then walked out without knowing whether I had succeeded. Alex did not ask how the panel scored me that evening. He came over with pizza, listened while I complained about one difficult question, and never once tried to learn anything I had not chosen to tell him. That restraint affected me more than any grand promise could have. Wednesday afternoon, Laura called me into her office. A sealed envelope rested on her desk. "Before you open this," she said, "you should know the committee reviewed the complete timeline. Your original nomination was filed months before the acquisition." I nodded, suddenly unable to speak. "Whatever is inside that envelope belongs to you." My hands were unsteady when I opened it. Senior Brand Strategist. Effective the following Monday. For several seconds, I simply stared at the words. I had imagined this moment for half a year, but I had never imagined needing proof that the achievement was mine. Laura smiled. "You earned it, Noah." I thanked her, walked into the hallway, and called Alex from an empty conference room. "I got it." There was a pause, then his voice changed completely. "You got it?" I laughed for the first time in days. "I got it. Am I allowed to be ridiculously proud of you? After business hours? That seems unfair. You agreed to boundaries. I am beginning to regret how reasonable I was." I was still smiling when we ended the call. For that afternoon, the office felt normal again. Melissa hugged me, my team congratulated me, and Laura announced my new responsibilities. Then, near 5 o'clock, I passed the elevators and heard 2 coworkers talking around the corner. "Interesting timing," one said. "New chief executive officer arrives Monday, Bennett gets promoted Wednesday." The other person lowered his voice, but I heard enough. Maybe Callahan already knew exactly who he wanted moving up. I kept walking. I did not confront them because every official fact was already on my side. Alex had not voted. He had not seen the scores. He had removed himself precisely so my career could remain mine. Yet as I entered the elevator, I understood the part no policy could solve. Alex had surrendered his power over my future, and I had earned the promotion anyway, but people who wanted a simpler story could still invent one. The doors began closing, and through the narrowing gap I saw Alex crossing the lobby 20 feet away. He noticed me. Neither of us moved toward the other. For the next week, Alex and I became experts at pretending coincidence was distance. We arrived at different times, left through different doors, and stopped meeting at the coffee shop across from the office because too many employees went there before work. At home, nothing between us had changed, yet inside the building we measured every glance like it carried consequences. I told myself this was temporary. Then Thursday evening, Alex suggested dinner at the Italian restaurant we liked on West 52nd Street, and my first question was whether anyone from the company usually ate there. The silence after I asked told me more than his answer could have. "Noah," he said gently, "when did dinner with me become a risk assessment?" I looked down at the menu. "When people started deciding my promotion belonged to you." Alex did not argue. That was one thing I had come to appreciate about him. He could command a room full of executives, but when the problem involved my life, he had learned to listen before trying to solve it. Grant Whitmore asked Dana about the promotion process today, he said. Grant was a senior operations executive who had been with the company for nearly 12 years. He was careful with his words, polished enough to make suspicion sound like professional concern. What did Dana tell him? I do not know. I am recused, remember? A tired laugh escaped me. Right. Alex studied me across the table. And I intend to stay recused. I knew that should have reassured me. Instead, I looked around the restaurant and realized I had chosen a table near the back because it was harder to see from the street. We are hiding, I said. Alex waited. Not protecting my career. Hiding. Saying it aloud made the distinction impossible to ignore. We had stopped walking out of work together. We avoided restaurants near the office. If Alex entered my department, he treated me with such perfect neutrality that sometimes I wondered whether our coworkers would believe we had ever spoken outside a conference room. I asked you for this, I said. You asked for professional boundaries. Alex's voice remained calm. You never asked me to make you feel like something I was ashamed of. I looked at him. Are you ashamed? His expression softened. Never. The answer came without hesitation, and somehow that made my chest ache more. Before I could respond, my phone vibrated. An email from the company events team announced the annual leadership gala for the following Friday. Attendance was strongly encouraged for senior staff. I turned the screen toward Alex. He read it, then looked back at me. We can arrive separately. I should have felt relieved. Instead, the suggestion sounded like another rule in a life that was becoming smaller. And once we are there, whatever makes you comfortable. What if I do not know anymore? Alex was quiet for a moment. Then I will not decide for you. I looked toward the restaurant window, where Manhattan moved freely beyond the glass. For weeks, I had believed secrecy was the price of protecting everything I had earned. Now I was beginning to wonder whether I was paying for that protection with something neither of us should have needed to surrender. And in 8 days, Alex and I would walk into the same ballroom filled with every person whose opinion I had been trying so hard to control. By Friday evening, I had spent 8 days preparing for a room I could never control. The gala occupied the top floor of a hotel overlooking Midtown Manhattan, all warm lights, polished glass, and conversations between people who seemed completely comfortable being watched. I arrived alone at 7:15. Alex arrived 20 minutes later with members of the board. We saw each other across the ballroom and performed the routine we had perfected. One professional glance. Nothing more. Melissa found me near the windows and congratulated me again on the promotion. Laura joined us, and for several minutes I almost relaxed. Then Grant Whitmore approached. Bennett, he said pleasantly. Senior brand strategist. Congratulations. Thank you. Remarkable timing. Laura's expression changed before mine did. Grant continued with the careful smile of someone who understood exactly how far he could go without saying anything directly offensive. 6 months in the process, I hear, and somehow everything finally falls into place the week new leadership arrives. The process was independently reviewed, Laura said. Of course. Grant lifted his glass slightly. I am only saying some careers move faster when the right people notice them. There it was. Polite enough to deny. Clear enough to understand. I looked across the ballroom. Alex was speaking with 3 board members, unaware of the conversation. For one irrational second, I wanted him beside me. Then I hated myself for wanting exactly the thing people suspected I depended on. Excuse me, I said. I walked toward the elevators before anyone could stop me. The doors opened, but before I stepped inside, I heard Alex behind me. Noah. I turned. He had followed me, but he stopped several feet away. What happened? Grant happened. Alex's jaw tightened slightly. What did he say? It does not matter. It matters if he questioned your integrity. And what are you going to do? Defend me as my boyfriend or investigate him as chief executive officer? Alex went silent. That is the problem, I said. Every road leads back to you. The elevator remained open beside me. If you defend me, they say I need your protection. If you stay silent, I stand in there pretending the person I go home with barely knows me. Alex took no step closer. Tell me what you want. I do not know. Then I will not choose for you. I looked toward the elevator. Leaving would be easy. I could go home, avoid the whispers, and tell myself I had protected my career. Alex spoke again, quieter this time. There is a difference between privacy and letting other people teach you to be ashamed of us. The words landed somewhere I had been avoiding for weeks. I turned back toward him. You think I am ashamed? No. I think you are afraid they will use me to diminish you. That fear makes sense. But I will not hide our relationship forever just to make dishonest people comfortable. I stared at him. He was not ordering me back into the ballroom. He was not promising to silence anyone. He was simply standing there, leaving the choice exactly where he had promised it would remain. The elevator doors began to close. I could have stopped them. I did not. They shut behind me. I do not want to leave, I said. Alex's expression softened. Then stay. I looked toward the ballroom entrance, where every rumor I feared was waiting. For the first time, I realized I did not need to control what everyone believed. I only needed to decide whether their opinions were powerful enough to make me erase something true. I looked at the closed elevator doors, then back at Alex. I do not want you pretending you do not love me anymore. He held my gaze without moving closer. Are you sure? I am sure. I am tired of acting like the truth is something dangerous. Alex nodded once. Then we do this your way. We walked back toward the ballroom together. Not touching. Not making an announcement. Just walking side by side instead of leaving 20 feet between us. It was astonishing how noticeable such a small change could feel. Melissa saw us first. Her eyes widened, then softened with sudden understanding. Laura noticed next. Neither said anything. Near the center of the room, Dana Mitchell stood with two board members, and Alex approached her before anyone else. Dana, I want to make sure there is no ambiguity tonight, he said calmly. My relationship with Noah began 11 months before this acquisition closed. It has already been disclosed, and my recusal remains in effect. Dana confirmed it without hesitation. Grant stood several feet away. His expression told me he had heard every word. Alex turned toward him, but his voice remained measured. Noah's compensation, evaluation, promotion, and reporting decisions are outside my authority under the safeguards already documented. His work can be questioned like anyone else's. His integrity should not be questioned because of whom he loves. Grant glanced toward me. I never said otherwise. Good, Alex replied. Then there is no disagreement. That was all. No threat. No executive command. No attempt to humiliate him. Alex had simply placed the truth where rumor had been standing. Then he stepped back. Literally stepped back, leaving space between us as conversation slowly resumed around the ballroom. I understood what he was doing. Even now, he was refusing to turn my choice into his performance. There is something I should say too, I said. Alex looked at me but remained silent. Grant, Dana, Laura, Melissa, and several nearby employees could hear me. My heart was racing, but my voice did not shake. My promotion process began 6 months before the acquisition. My nomination, evaluations, and campaign results are documented. An independent panel made the final decision after Alex removed himself from the process. I will answer questions about my work whenever they are asked in good faith. But I am not going to apologize for having a career and a relationship at the same time." Nobody applauded. I was grateful for that. This was not a speech designed to make me heroic. It was simply the first time I had stopped organizing my life around the possibility that somebody might misunderstand it. Grant gave a small nod and moved away. Laura squeezed my shoulder before returning to another conversation. Melissa leaned toward me and whispered, 11 months. I almost laughed. We will discuss that later. Alex started toward the board members again, clearly intending to give me my space. I watched him take 3 steps. Then I realized there was one final decision nobody in that room could make for me. Alex. He turned. I crossed the distance between us and took his hand. Surprise flashed across his face before becoming something warmer. Stay for a minute, I said. His fingers closed gently around mine. As long as you want. People noticed. Of course they noticed. But for the first time since Monday morning, being seen did not feel like losing control. It felt like choosing what was mine. 3 months later, nobody stopped talking when Alex walked through my department. That might have been the clearest sign that life had returned to normal. People knew we were together. They also knew Dana and the board maintained the safeguards separating Alex from every employment decision involving me. Eventually, there was simply less to gossip about than everyone had expected. I remained senior brand strategist, worked late when campaigns demanded it, made mistakes, corrected them, and earned praise without wondering whether every compliment came with an invisible question attached. Then Laura forwarded me an internal posting for Associate Director of Brand Strategy. My first instinct was to close it. The position meant leading 2 teams and managing projects I had wanted to oversee for years, but applying meant putting myself through another process people might question. Laura caught me staring at the posting. Do not let imaginary conversations make career decisions for you, she said. So I applied. The selection process lasted 5 weeks. I completed 2 interviews, presented a strategy case, and met with an independent leadership panel. Alex knew only what I chose to tell him. He never asked Dana for updates. He never saw my scores. On a cold Tuesday afternoon, I walked out of the office and found the final decision waiting in my email. I had been selected. I stood on the sidewalk reading the message twice while Manhattan moved around me. Then I called Alex. I got it. His laugh came through immediately. Am I allowed to celebrate this one before business hours end? It is 5:37. Excellent. I have been released from corporate restrictions. Pizza at my place. I will bring the good kind. Months earlier, success had felt like something I needed to defend. That evening, it felt wonderfully ordinary. My first week in the new role was equally ordinary. I led meetings. Alex led the company. Sometimes we crossed paths in the lobby and said hello without pretending we had never shared breakfast. Sometimes we left the building together. Nobody collapsed from the scandal of seeing 2 adult men walk through the same door. Grant remained professionally polite. Melissa eventually stopped demanding details about how Alex and I had kept our relationship secret for 11 months. Most importantly, I stopped measuring my worth against rumors I could never completely prevent. In early spring, the company held a small reception after one of my team's campaigns exceeded its quarterly targets. I spent most of the evening with my staff while Alex remained across the room with senior leadership. When the reception ended, I found him waiting near the lobby doors. He did not assume I wanted to leave with him. He simply smiled. Ready? Yeah. Outside, the Manhattan air was cool, and traffic moved steadily along the avenue. We reached the crosswalk together. Alex started to reach for my hand, then stopped halfway. The gesture was so familiar that I smiled. For all the authority he carried inside that building, he still left that final distance for me to close. So I did. I slipped my fingers through his and stood beside him while we waited for the light to change. Alex had enough power to make thousands of employees follow his decisions, but the reason I trusted him had never been his power. It was that when my future, my career, and my choices were involved, he had learned when not to use it. The signal changed, and we crossed the street together, not hiding, not proving anything, and no longer asking permission to live a life that belonged equally to both of us.